Take a look at this old turbo diesel engine I recently pulled out of an old Mercedes-Benz. You know, when I picked up this car, it had been sitting out in a field for about 5 years, full of water, very rusty. But the owner assured me, that he had spent a lot of money and he had, just before he parked it, he had totally rebuilt this engine. Now, I'm sure some of you are chuckling and, oh, I've heard that story before. I can't believe how many times I've heard this over the 25 years I've been messing around with these old cars. Oh yeah, man, I had that engine rebuilt. And of course, my first question is, you got any paperwork? No, I lost the paperwork, don't have any. But man, I spent a lot of money, totally rebuilt. You know, I don't know what rebuilding means to some people. Some people, I think it just means spraying it off with a washer, maybe putting some piston rings in it or something. But I am very skeptical when I get an engine like this and someone tells me it's been rebuilt. So how do you know if it's rebuilt? You know, it's pretty greasy down in here. Take a close look in by these injectors and by the injection pump. You look down on top the injection pump, the delivery valves, there's rust in here. And of course you look along the top of the head under the valve cover gasket. It's oily, it's real dirty down in here, dirty over in here. So this doesn't look much like a rebuilt engine to me, but not so fast. I'm going to show you a few things you should look at. And these are clues that might give you some indication that the engine has been worked on. Let's take a close look at this one on the other side and on the back side and on the front side and see what we can discover. Take a look at the flywheel and the starter ring gear here and the flex plate. Notice it's rusty. You might say, oh, that's rusty, that's bad. Not so. This is obviously a sign that it has been sitting for a long time. But notice something else. There's no oil wetness anywhere, not even along the bottom here. And that's a good indication that the rear main seal has not been leaking oil. Take a close look along this left side bottom edge where the pan meets the block, particularly where the oil filter housing is bolted to the block. Totally dry. No evidence of even any wetness of oil down here, which is very unusual. And all through here, underneath the injection pump, look at how dry this is. That's a sign that this engine may not have had very many miles on it. Look at the front of the engine. I pulled the vacuum pump off. This gasket is not a factory gasket. I can recognize that. Water pump is very tight. And there is no evidence of any oil coming out of the front crank seal, which you know is very unusual for any kind of a high mileage old Mercedes diesel. So let's take a look at the right side of the engine. When I pulled off the intake and turbo manifold assemblies and I saw this, I immediately knew this engine has been worked on. This is evidence of a block having been hot tanked at a machine shop and never repainted. You don't see this on a factory engine. Also, you look along here, I'm seeing some silicone. I'm seeing some RTV as a sealant here on this pan, and they did not use RTV at the factory. So we know that this block has been worked on. We know the pan's been off, but I decided, hey, let's pull the injectors and see how those look. By this time, I was getting pretty excited that, hey, this may be a rebuilt diesel engine. So when I pulled these injectors out, right away I could tell that these are either brand new or Bosch rebuilts because of the black coating. They're not rusty. And then I'll look at the tip, and the tips have absolutely no wear in them, just a little bit of soot. The soot probably gives you an indication that, yeah, obviously it's got a few thousand miles on it. But this is the real winner down in here. You look into these pre-chambers and you see no oil, no wetness in the pre-chambers. That's an indication this engine does not have any blow-by. So that was true with all 5 injectors, and then finally I decided, okay, let's pull the valve cover and see what the engine looks like inside. So when I finally got around to pulling this valve cover off, it was like opening a Christmas present. Now, those of you who have been around these diesel engines, you know what these look like when you pull the valve cover. So let's see if you're as shocked as I was. Look at that. I don't know about you, but I have never seen OM617 diesel engine this clean inside, short of having just been recently rebuilt. Look at that. There's no black oil. Look at those cam lobes. The chain is brand new. You can tell by looking at the chain. Looks like the guides are new. So I think in this case, I lucked out. I really did. But there's something else very special about this engine, and that's why it is so valuable. One more thing, here's another clue. When you pull a valve cover off and the gasket is super soft like this, that is an indication that this gasket has been replaced quite recently. And here's what I am really excited about right here. This is the mount for the hydraulic pump, and this engine has been removed from a turbo diesel station wagon either from 1981 to 1984. This is really exciting. I mean, if you don't know how much these engines cost to overhaul, just Google it. I'm not going to tell you. Just do a little research and find out what one of these would cost to overhaul. And then with the popularity of the 300 TD wagons, having an engine like this is something else.